Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the 13th of October 2014, the podcast that choosy lovers choose. This is your host, Shane Killian, and joining me again this week is Travis Retriever. Travis, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back.
First, a quick announcement. There'll be no podcast next week because I'm shooting a short subject for a local producer, and I'll tell you more about that when I can, and I hope the podcast will be back in 2 weeks, but I don't yet know what the full shooting schedule is going to be, so it's possible that there might not be another one after that, but I'll let you know when I can. So, to make up for it, I'm working on some more videos to fill the void that I think you'll like, and I'm also working on a new ultra-high-def version of one of my most popular series, so stay tuned for that. Okay, let's flagellate the news of the bogus. And there have been a few times in the past when we've talked about the movie RoboCop, where the police went on strike and Detroit ended up being a cesspool of crime, drugs, and violence, and other movies like The Purge have had similar themes. Well, guess what? It's happened for real now. In Acapulco, Mexico, the police have been striking off and on since May, and pretty much continuously for 2 months now. And the problem is, we're not seeing the crime waves and the chaos of the movies. In fact, a lot of things in Acapulco are actually better now.
I mean, the name of that city reminded me of, like, how some people will say, like, Acapulco Gold, and I think, like, and it made me think pot for some reason.
Yeah, there's a lot of drug cartels through there.
Yeah.
That should show you how effective the police have been.
Yeah, jeez. Even more fascinating was it talked about how, ironically, the drug cartels themselves ended up being more effective at keeping the peace.
Yeah.
Admittedly, being a bit, how shall I say it, potent with it, as in, when they found out that the person's been, like, causing bad, they're never heard from again, so,
Not exactly constitutional protections there, but...
Yeah, but, I mean, you know, it's progress.
Better than what it was.
God.
Yeah, because apparently there was a band of criminals that were just going through neighborhood, stealing from stores, terrorizing people, and the cartels came right in and took care of them.
Go figure. So it reminds me of that one video that basically it was like 10 reasons why the mafia would be preferable to government. Just crazy.
But the transit police went on strike and the traffic flow got better. Well, when the police aren't blocking the streets with their strike, that is.
And I also liked how it pointed out the issue, like, with traffic lights, how, you know, it tends to have people, like, waiting for no reason and causing traffic backups. I mean, that's one reason why, even if they are a bit awkward at first, I've kind of always preferred the roundabouts or circles, as they're sometimes called. I mean, yeah, they take some getting used to and stuff, but at least they don't cause massive traffic backups, so there you go.
You get more cars through a roundabout in a certain amount of time than you do with any other kind of intersection.
Wow.
Yeah, they're the best for that.
Awesome.
And I've never really understood this, because I've always thought that if you go up to a red light, it should be treated just like a stop sign.
Yeah.
Because you slow down, you stop, you look, if there's no one going, why can't you go? But in North Carolina and most other states, you can only do that if you're turning right.
Yeah.
But that's what they're doing. They're just slowing down, not even stopping. They're treating it more like yield signs, but they're slowing down, making sure no cars are coming and then going on through. And
reminds me of this really old show, like Pete and Pete, how it actually made fun of that stuff with the stop signs. There was this one character on that show, like, who's a bus driver, and anyways, he was stopped at a stop sign, and for some reason it just would not turn. And I guess being a bus driver, you know, he obviously can't just run at red, or that would not be good.
Yeah.
And he basically can't get the bus moving before the light changes back to red, and he's pretty much stranded. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And of course there are no cars anywhere. He's the only car for miles, so it's wow. So even they were poking fun at that.
Yeah, so the municipal police went on strike, and basically nothing happened. It was all business as usual, except people were a little happier because they noticed they weren't being harassed all the time.
Yeah, I can see how that would be.
But my favorite part was when the Mexican military said, okay, you're on strike, that means you're not the police anymore. We're taking your guns away.
Oh, God. Shoe on the other foot, as the saying goes. Craziness.
But yeah, I mean, basically, all of the laws are null and void. No one observes the closing times and curfews for bars and restaurants and everything else. And all of the laws on smoking and drinking, everyone's just ignoring those. No one's enforcing speed limits. And Nothing's really happening. It's not the RoboCop, just war zone, demilitarized zone type thing.
Yeah.
No.
And of course, that old stereotype of, heavily armed gangs riding motorcycles lobbing homemade bombs or whatever that I'm sure we've all heard a million times.
Oh, yeah.
Here's hoping many other cities, and indeed places in general, follow.
Okay, so I think pretty much everyone knows by now that I have an autistic kid, and so I can really personalize stories like this. I fenced in my backyard and put in a playground for my son to play in, just like the Miranda family who got their playset as a gift from the Make-A-Wish Foundation and then was told by the city of Santa Fe that they had to take it down.
That's not cool.
No. And this was for their 10-year-old daughter, Tiffany, who has a severe seizure disorder. And imagine trying to go to a public park with a kid with a seizure disorder. So they set this up, and Tiffany's mother, Jessica, said, quote, "She just loves it. She's able to be a normal kid. She has her own special park."
Yeah, that's just too precious and awesome.
And she went on to say, quote, "So where do you expect my daughter to play?" They said, "Well, the city's not responsible for your daughter's disability." They said, "Your Tiffany is not our problem." Well, if it's not your problem, why don't you leave them alone?
I know, right? Good grief. And the excuses for it are just maybe going like, really? Like, as if to imply that, it's really messy and it implies that, maybe it's a house like with negligent parents. Yet, isn't the fact that they're fighting this, and then of course there's the documentation that they got it from the Make-A-Wish Foundation to begin with, I mean, doesn't that, at least somewhat imply that, maybe tip that Bayesian probability the other way around for that,
Yeah, well, they're saying it's a public nuisance, and I don't really get how... what does public nuisance actually mean anyway? That seems to be one of those things you can make apply to anything.
Pretty much. The only way I could think of if it were a public nuisance is if it's maybe creating a lot of noise and banging, but...
Or maybe so cluttered it was a fire hazard, but no, that's not what it looked like.
And you'd think if that were the case, rather than using the vague fog speak, they'd just say, "This is a fire hazard,"
yeah.
Or, you're making too much noise and it's disturbing others. Knock it off.
But she showed a reporter some of the tickets that the city gave them, and they said they have to remove all items from the backyard and front yard, including the playground equipment. So the reporter showed this to the city manager, and the city manager said, "Well, we're not taking down their playground, but that's what the ticket says."
And, we'll keep in touch, maybe clear up any miscommunications, and, yeah, backpedaling goodness.
Yeah.
But, we are the state, compassion, more buzzwords that, might as well be complete gibberish at this point.
Yeah. But, I like watching stories like this, where this gets covered by the press and it gets in the public eye and the city backs down. But I really have to wonder how many times this happens when it doesn't get covered by the press, and so they don't back down because no one even knows it's happening. The people involved don't have anyone fighting for them.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a big fan of the press, in general. Yeah, even I will admit, it is nice to see at least some members of the press maybe take that role seriously and direct their skeptical gaze at government and ask WTF, guys.
These local reporters and journalists seem to do a much better job of that than the bigger ones, and especially the national pundits and everything. The local people seem to do pretty well.
Ugh, the national pundits. God. Yeah, that's for sure.
So her mother said, quote, "I'm not going to let this go. I'm not going to remove the playhouse, and I'm not going to remove her canopy, and I want them to stop picking on my Tiffany, so best of luck to her."
True that.
Bogosity.tv and all of its services are hosted at GoDaddy. I've been very satisfied with GoDaddy's services and their wonderful 24/7 customer support for over 10 years now. So I'm happy to be able to give you this special offer. Just sign up for any new domain, web hosting, email, or other service and get 35% off with the code WOWNOBOGON. That's WOWNOBOGON. Because there's nothing bogus about these savings on quality internet hosting. Just go to GoDaddy.com and use the code WOWNOBOGON. So, we talked about the recent Supreme Court case saying that cops can't just go through your phone without a warrant. But you may be thinking, so what? I'll let them search. After all, I have nothing to hide. Yeah, who wants to bet that's what Sandra Prince thought when she let the police search her cell phone so that she could demonstrate to them that she wasn't the huge drug dealer they thought she was? And it worked. She just got sentenced to probation. But later on, she found out that the police had used her cell phone and lots of the pictures in it to create a fake Facebook profile for her.
So, basically, one small step below identity theft is what I'm getting out of this.
Pretty much.
Grief.
And the Justice Department is claiming that the federal agent had the right to do this.
Yeah, and something about, we'll do an investigation. Yeah, how many times have we heard that?
Yeah. Well, and government lawyers are defending the agent's right, and this included some racy pictures of her, and by the time I got there, they had already taken the racier ones down, but apparently there were pictures of her in a bikini and in, bra and panties. Things that she never posted online, she just kept them on her phone and figured, okay, that's keeping them private, but they posted it to this phony Facebook account, and they even posted pictures of her young son and niece.
So people who had nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Yeah. And kids as well. They're like little kids.
Yeah. I mean, in the second half of the article regarding consent, that's just completely ridiculous. The idea that she would have consented to that.
Yeah. By consenting to the search, she consented to them making this fake Facebook profile.
Grief.
But we're just finding out about this now because of the court case, but this happened back in 2010. And it happened when one of her friends asked about her picture she had posted on her Facebook page, and she was like, what Facebook page? She doesn't even have a Facebook page of her own.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. One of those oh why moments.
But no, this guy created the fake Facebook page using her real name and used it to communicate with at least one wanted fugitive. And I don't really know what he was doing, but it sounds like either entrapment or just faking evidence outright. That's what it sounds like to me.
Couldn't that possibly, maybe endanger her? If we're talking about people who are dangerous criminals, they might think, oh, snap, the BI is trying to get me in jail.
Yeah.
We have to cap her or whatever, something like that.
Or they use this to communicate with this big drug dealer, the big drug dealer's competition going, that's a new person on the street, we gotta go take her out.
Yeah, that's something like that. Look at it the other way around. Say if someone were to pull this, if a private person were to pull off something like this, or hell, even better, if someone were to pull this off on a government agent with them being on the receiving end of something that's completely ridiculous. I'm pretty sure that seeing fumes or fuming mad would somehow neglect to capture how much rage would be flying, would there?
And her attorney, Kimberly Zimmer, said, quote, Ms. Arquette never intended for any of the pictures on her phone to be displayed publicly, let alone on Facebook, which has more than 800 million active users. More disturbing than the fact that the DEA agents posted a picture of her in her underwear and bra is the fact that the DEA agents posted a picture of her young son and young niece in connection with that Facebook account, which the DEA agents later claim was used for legitimate law enforcement purposes, that is, to have contact with individuals involved in narcotics distribution.
So in other words, not only putting her in danger, but also putting her young family members in danger, too.
Yeah. And like I said, this was all set up in 2010. It was up as of a few days ago. I looked at it yesterday. That was Friday the 10th. When I was preparing for it, and Facebook had taken it down sometime in the last couple of days.
Yeah,
but it had been up that whole time.
God. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not really a big fan of Facebook. But even I will admit that I personally thought it was a good idea for them to try and take that stuff down. Seriously.
Well, it's a total violation of their terms and conditions. That's what they should do. And I'm sure the only reason it took them as long as they did is that no one knew about this. Because this was all secret and sealed up before, a little bit ago when this story came out, when they filed the case for it.
Makes me sad to know that what's we're looking at here and seeing as terrible bad now is probably going to be accepted as normal in the norm and whatevs. about 20 years down the line, which is just beyond saddening.
So after all we've seen, how ticked off can we possibly get at the TSA? Well, a man is suing the TSA because he says that agents opened up a sealed urn in his luggage and spilled his mother's ashes into the suitcase.
And the worst part is, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. I recall a few years back, Lord T. Hawkeye on one of his DeviantArt journals posting a story about the TSA where they spilled someone's grandfather's ashes and had a fun little laugh about it. Yeah.
So this happened to Mr. Shannon Thomas. He apparently had it checked in with his luggage, and he didn't even know about it until he got to his destination and opened up the suitcase. And he said, he made sure this urn was sealed. He applied force and repeatedly tested the urn to make sure it was sealed, and then packed it up in his suitcase and packed clothing around it. And so he says that the TSA agents detained, opened, and inspected his luggage. And during the search, which was done without a warrant, they unpacked his things, unscrewed the urn, and, quote, negligently, carelessly, and recklessly replaced the lid, and then repacked it. And he knew that because they put in that little tag in there that says, oh, by the way, we went through your luggage.
Well, it just makes me dread the idea of flying, to be honest. As bad as car rides are, at least it doesn't involve, heaven forbid yet, at least it doesn't yet involve being molested and having people rummage through my stuff.
Yeah, so this happened back in 2012, and now he's filed his lawsuit against the TSA in federal court. He's alleging emotional distress, property damage, and, quote, outrageous disturbance of human remains.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, no word from them, like no apologies or anything. Our moral betters, ladies and gentlemen, our moral betters.
Well, little wonder then that more and more airports are telling the TSA to take a hike and taking over security themselves. And in fact, the Orlando Sanford International Airport just became the 19th airport in the United States to do that.
Sweet.
So this is the TSA Screening Partnership Program, and this allows airports to say, okay, we're not going to use the TSA screeners. We're going to hire our own screeners provided by private companies. It's still overseen and regulated by the TSA, so all of the same rules are still in place for what you can and cannot take on the planes and things like that. But at least they're able to go to private companies and actually get some proper people in who know what they're doing and who are actually willing to do a better job.
Mm-hmm. So basically, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and they can be much more flexible in hiring and training the employees. There's lower employee turnover, better productivity, and lower personnel costs. A study from the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure said the taxpayers could save $1 billion over 5 years if the nation's top 35 airports went over to this model.
Awesome. Of course, there's also the fact that, if the statistics are any indicator, before guns were banned on airplanes or those hijackings and the like were pretty much non-existent.
Well, what happened was, if I remember correctly, it was 1968. Before then, the total number of hijackings were basically zero. There was like one or two here or there. But, pilots could arm themselves, and a lot of them just stopped the hijackings in their tracks. And then in 1968, I believe it was, they passed the law that said that you can't bring guns onto airplanes. Now, the hijackings at that point shot up, but that was probably more due to the fact that Cuba went to a policy of not extraditing criminals to America, and if you watch movies from the time, the hijacker always wants the plane to go to Cuba. That's why. Yeah, that's why they weren't extraditing criminals. And then I think it was in 1972, they did two things. They signed an extradition agreement with Cuba, and they put in the metal detectors and things at the airports, and then it basically went back down to zero again.
Wow.
But, that whole Cuba thing was just this anomaly that got right in the way of this. But yeah, before then, anyone who wanted to could bring a gun on a plane. Nothing happened.
Yeah. Since I'm told by, I remember hearing from one of my professors that nowadays, you're basically just treated like cattle.
Well, when you're an industry that's really cartelized like like the airline industries are, and let's face it, most airports are just outright government monopolies. They don't have the incentive to make you happy. They have the incentive to cram as many seats as they can on the plane, and they don't have to worry if they make your flight experience miserable.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of people always, like, wanting on how, the free market, it does horrible with happiness, etc. I mean, have these people never seen John Stossel and his experience in, I want to say it was a communist country, how, like, when he was at a restaurant, he was waiting there and to be seated or something, and, the waiters and folks there, they were just sitting or standing around smoking cigarettes and, just generally not being very productive, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I remember one time he was talking about the garbage workers, and when the city was running the garbage pickup, everyone was just kind of lazy, and they just kind of, lazed around. They showed up late. They kind of did a half-assed job at it. And then they ended that and went over to private companies doing it. And this time, the workers were eager. They were energetic. They showed up to work on time. And they, by and large, were the same people. They were the exact same people.
Wow. I mean, since there's been a lot of drama regarding Stefan Molyneux lately, kind of reminds me of something that he once said, if not one of his books, but in one of his videos, and, I'm not going to try to find this, and I don't expect anyone to even try to find this, but...
It's a needle in a really large haystack.
Yeah, to put it mildly. Was the idea that, but the biggest changes of these, like even if we were to immediately switch over to a completely full-blown libertarian society, it would still take, what was it, like 1, maybe 2 generations to a fully change, but even then that kind of struck me as kind of BS, just because of that one case example you gave in one of your videos way back when, regarding... I want to say it was like a Plymouth Plantation where they just switched over from
Plymouth Plantation
common ownership model to a private ownership model, and it was just the same people. Worse famine at the time, yet despite that, they went from famine to plenty with the same people.
Yeah, read the history of Plymouth Plantation. That was, it's from the journal of Governor William Bradford, and I think it was like his grandson or something that wrote the actual book, but it's all from his journal. I mean, firsthand, telling you exactly what happens.
Yeah. Because, I get his Steph's idea that, work habits tend to be ingrained and hard to learn and hard to change, especially in people who are older, but, I don't know. As the saying goes, light a fire under their ass and you'd be amazed what happens.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just like unemployment. Because I remember back when unemployment benefits were for 6 months, they were like, people aren't getting a job until like the last 2 weeks before their benefits expire. That means it's not long enough, so we need to extend it. They extended 8 months. Oh, look, people aren't getting a job until 2 weeks. Now it's like, a year and a half or something? Oh, look, people aren't getting a job until 2 weeks before. It's like, well, work it out, people.
This isn't rocket science, people. I know economics is, like, really stressful and that, it tells you things you don't want to hear, gives you stuff about limitations to yourself and others you might not want to see. But, like eating your vegetables, it's something you gotta do.
History is written by the winners, and so apparently is economics. That's why there's LibertyClassroom.com. Probably the best single learning resource for history and economics on the web, LibertyClassroom.com teaches U.S. history, Western Civ, and economics from actual university professors. There's lots of free material to get you started, including introductory lectures on all these subjects, and when you sign up, you get the full site's content for just $99 a year, less than the price of 2 cups of coffee a month. And if you type in the promo code Bogosity in all caps, you'll get your first year for just $88. Lectures are available in both video and audio format, so you can watch or listen to them on your computer, your phone or tablet, or in your car. Learn at your own pace about the subjects you're interested in and become a more effective debater. You'll also get access to lots of supplemental materials and even the professors themselves via the discussion forum and even live video chats. Inform yourself against the myths and propaganda of our society. Visit LibertyClassroom.com. Okay, I'm trying to keep straight everything we've covered about organic food. It isn't any more nutritious. It's impossible to distinguish in blind taste tests. It actually requires more pesticides, and you end up paying more for less. Am I leaving anything out?
Well, apparently some stuff regarding manure and antibiotic resistance by the looks of it.
Well, this is the new item we have to put on the list. Organic fertilizer made from manure can actually worsen the problem of antibiotic resistance.
OMG.
And this is a new study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And when I first heard this, I was thinking, well, okay, there are cows they're feeding antibiotics to. They get antibiotic-resistant bacterial flora in their gut. It comes out in the fertilizer, and it goes in. No, this is even from cows that haven't been fed antibiotics.
Wow.
What happened was microbiologist Joe Handelsman treated different soil samples. Some of them she treated with a nitrogen-based fertilizer, and other she used manure from cows that had never had antibiotics. And so her team looked for enzymes called beta-lactamases, and this breaks down a class of antibiotics that is penicillin and I think amoxicillin and all those. There's a whole bunch of antibiotics that it breaks down, and that's how the resistant works. So if you're a bacteria and you have a gene that encodes this enzyme, you have antibiotic resistance. So 2 weeks after the experiment, the soil that had the manure contained significantly higher numbers of bacteria producing beta-lactamases than soil treated only with the nitrogen-based fertilizer. And they found that the bacteria didn't come from the manure, it came from the soil. So somehow the manure treatment helped these natural bacteria grow this resistance to antibiotics, either by feeding them directly or by eliminating competitors and letting them take over. And it was especially helpful for Pseudomonas species, and those are very common human infections to get.
And I kind of like the ending of this article. Moral of the story, before we say anything about nitrogen treatment is terrible and organic is wonderful, we need to see what the downsides are. Yeah, so it sounds like apparently organic, all natural, yada yada, apparently also isn't the panacea for antibiotic resistance and other stuff like that many of its proponents will tout it to be as well.
Well, and here's the thing. Despite what all the naturalistic people will tell you, GMOs and non-organic foods and processes and fertilizers and things have been tested. The organic stuff hasn't. It's the other way around from what they tell you.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of an article from this guy named Alan Aragon. I remember seeing a while way back when regarding protein supplements, in that it showed that of the ones they tested, it actually had less of like toxic metals, like chromium or cadmium or other stuff like that, in it than various other whole foods. And it reminded me of things like, I know people always go on about how, if you process it, you strip out all the life and all the good stuff in it. But even if that's true, couldn't it also be removing other really bad stuff, like, heavy metals and other kind of stuff that you probably don't want in it?
Well, it's just like, I love how people somehow think that all these natural processes care about human beings, and either for, it's going to do bad for them or it's going to do good for them. The question I've always wanted to ask a homeopath is, because the idea, you dilute the bejesus out of it, and then you say, there are no side effects. How does the water that has the memory to do that know which are the side effects and which are the effects you want to have? Because my son has a sleep disorder. He takes clonidine at night to help him sleep. Clonidine is also a blood pressure medicine. So is it a sleep medicine that has a side effect of lowering your blood pressure, or is it blood pressure medicine that has a side effect of making you sleepy? How are you supposed to know?
Good question. Very good question.
Well, I mean, it's the naturalistic fallacy. The idea is that everything natural is all good. And there was like someone in the comments who said, but doesn't this just help the natural bacteria in the soil? Yes, it does. But the natural bacteria in the soil doesn't care about you. There's no selective pressure there to say, make this safe for humans.
I mean, it's like I said on the forums, it's like, folks, things like, let's see, arsenic, snake venom, Ebola, yeah, I went there, smallpox and the like are all natural, but they'll still kill you.
And organic.
Well, okay, except maybe the heavy metals, but, that's...
Well, okay, not the heavy metals, yeah.
And, I mean, that stuff's all natural, but put it in you, especially in sufficient doses, it will still kill you regardless.
Hackers, terrorists, the NSA. But I repeat myself. Your online security is under attack, and the weakest point is your password. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass plugs into your browser and allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords anywhere on the web, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers and all your computers, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, membership info, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications and even mobile devices, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now. So we've talked about Uber and Lyft and all those other ride-sharing services that people love, but cities don't because it takes profits away from their taxicab cronies. We've seen a lot of good things, but to my knowledge, I think this is the first proper economic examination of the issue.
And I gotta say, what little excuses they had against it were pretty weak. Like, it just sounds so elitist, like, oh, but, that means that the value of their medallions goes down. Yeah, that's how competition works. I mean,
that's the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, that argument there just sounds so entitled. Like, oh, well, I paid a lot for this stuff, ergo, you have to make up for it for me. I mean, it's like, get over yourselves, guys. You're not entitled to profits just because you're in business.
Well, and I love the stuff like the one that happened a while ago. I don't remember if we covered it on the podcast, but it was either an Uber or Lyft driver. There was an accident and he hit someone or hit a boy or something like that and killed him. And they were like, oh, this is somehow against Uber and Lyft. It's like, wow, someone in a car had an accident. That's never happened before.
Great.
How many taxi cabs are involved in that? Okay, one of them had an accident. Well, only one? How many thousands of drivers are there,
Yeah.
If it's only one, that's actually pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's just excuse making.
Yep. Context and perspective, always and ever a good thing.
So anyway, this economic examination has to do with something called deadweight loss, which is where, like you said, with the medallions, what they're doing is they're artificially constraining supply. And what happens is if you pull up the supply-demand curve in your head, the supply curve is upward sloping, you shift the supply curve to the left, that increases prices and lowers quantity, so there are fewer taxi cabs, and the ones that are there are more expensive. So what Uber and Lyft and Sidecar and all these others do is they expand the market for it, they expand the supply of services, they push the supply curve back out to the right, quantity goes up, and price goes down. So this was the initiative on global markets at the Chicago School of Business, and it had a panel of 43 economic experts, and they asked them if, quote, letting car services such as Uber or Lyft compete with taxi firms on equal footing regarding genuine safety and insurance requirements, but without restrictions on prices or routes, raises customer welfare. 40 of them replied, 40 of the 43, and they all said yes. They all either agreed or strongly agreed.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's pretty good consensus. Very nice consensus.
So one of them was Oliver Hart of Harvard, and he said, quote, I don't see any externalities. According to standard economics, competition enhances welfare, and I believe that will be true here. You also have Judith Chevalier of Yale, who said it was, quote, pretty much the same as removing the cap on the number of medallions. And Anil Kashyap of the University of Chicago said that there was even more benefits to it, quote, they innovate, e.g., knowing the rating of the driver who will come and having an easy way to find a lost phone after you take the ride, neither of which you can do with a taxi. Because you don't know who you're getting with a taxi.
So, in other words, case number 11D6 billion of a free market equivalent being better. A few others drew cautionary tales, like Chicago's Might and Grace noting part of the gain in customer welfare comes at undermining property rights of taxi. Yeah, that word does not mean what you think it means, pal. It really does.
Yeah, it comes from undermining property rights of taxi medallion owners. No, it's
I think I already addressed that earlier on. Yeah.
And Richard Thaler also mentioned surge pricing, and this is like when, if for some reason there's just aren't that many drivers available, or something happens and it's raining, or it's a blizzard or whatever, and there just aren't that many drivers, and the price, of course, goes through the roof, which is a good thing because that means that people are going to think twice, hey, do I really need to go out and do something in this weather, because that could be dangerous. But, a lot of people view that as being unfair.
But they're exploiting the poor. Yeah, please.
And now let's click our heels together 3 times and say this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And once again, it goes to Dr. Mehmet Oz. We did him for the first time back in June, and didn't take him long for him to get his second one. I suppose it was inevitable that someone was going to claim this at some point. He says that GMOs cause autism.
Of course.
Yeah, and instead of trying to get to the original comments, I'm just linking to this one article on thenest.com from Stephen Novella, which is just an absolutely beautiful takedown, as Stephen Novella usually does. So he talks about Oz and his guest, which was anti-GMO activist Zen Honeycutt, are claiming that pesticides that are used with certain GMO varieties may cause autism. And, of course, they're doing the whole thing where, oh, well, look at the rise in autism, and now look at the rise in use of these pesticides and GMOs. Yeah, they went up together. Yeah.
It's that kind of intellectual sleight of hand. So dishonest.
But he has this great graphic that I love. He made a graphic where he shows the rise in autism and the rise in sales of organic food, and it's a nice, real tight correlation.
Yeah, that was just awesome. Oh, God. That's up there with the pirates and global warming one.
Yeah. What was that one we gave the Silver Clue on award to where you could do all the different correlations and find them yourself?
It looks like it's www.tylervegan.com / correlations.
Spurious correlations, that was it.
Yeah, like the one on top. U.S. spending on science, space, and technology. Suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation.
Yeah.
Correlation 99%.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to play around with. So Oz's idea is, one of the reasons for doing GMO crops is so that you can make them resistant to certain pesticides, and then you put the pesticides on the crops, and that helps take care of it. And the pesticides are hazardous to your health and might specifically cause autism, whereas organic food is pesticide-free. No, it's not. And as we just saw with the manure fertilizer, it's not all that good either.
Not only that, but wash your food. Run water on it, at the very least. I mean, even the things of fruit that I get from the store say, please wash before use or before consumption.
Yeah, so this Zen Honeycutt character said, quote, "We love our farmers and we have faith in our farmers. We have faith that they can and will farm as has been done for thousands of years without GMOs I know. Well, wait. Listen to this next bit. Without GMOs containing foreign proteins and the use of toxic chemicals."
Okay, first off, what the hell does foreign proteins even mean?
I don't know. A protein is an amino acid chain that kind of folds over on itself, and most of them are broken down in your stomach and intestines by your digestive processes. There are some that actually make it through, but as part of the testing of GMO foods, they test specifically for those protein sequences that have been known to make it through digestion or cause allergies or toxicities. And so far, there have been precisely 0 reported cases of allergic reactions to GMO food.
Also, another little word choice there that confused me here. So, toxic chemicals. This person does know that even...
Like dihydrogen monoxide.
Exactly. They do know that, even water can kill you if you drink too much of it. It's not just the chemical or compound or whatever itself, but also the dosage and the person consuming it. They know that, right? Well,
Yeah.
am I kidding? I doubt they care.
Now,
to begin with.
different chemicals have different levels of toxicity, but I mean, they act like it's just like the anti-vax people with mercury. And I was like, if there's one mercury atom in there, oh no, it's this big toxic thing that'll give you autism. No, it's the amount. It's the amount that's important.
It kind of reminds me of how, like, I remember talking, like, with this one person regarding potassium. Basically, we were learning about nutrition and stuff. Like, how, it's not necessarily just the sodium in your diet, but rather the ratio of potassium to sodium. And they're talking about how, like, oh, well, but that's probably, like, natural potassium, not potassium in chemicals or whatever, because, I'm told that that's what they'll inject, like, in animals when they euthanize them. And I think, okay, now maybe it's just the chemist in me, but they do know that unless we're talking about different radioactive isotopes or whatever, or maybe possibly different chemical compounds, then all potassium atoms are identical.
Well, and like chlorine will kill you, but if it's part of a salt molecule, it's fine.
Yeah. And I think, I haven't researched it yet, but I have a sneaking suspicion that the person telling them that left out the second half of that molecule's name. Potassium. I was thinking it was probably something like, potassium. And I lost it for a second. What was
potassium iodide?
I was thinking either that or potassium cyanide. No.
Potassium cyanide would be bad news.
Yeah. I was thinking one or the other. I mean, grief.
Potassium iodide is the pills they give us because I live near a nuclear plant, and if something ever happens, like has never ever happened before with that type of nuclear power plant, you take those and it's supposed to protect your thyroid. And you can also get potassium chloride, which if you need to cut down on your sodium, that's a good replacement for salt.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Well, the thing about GMOs is they've actually reduced the use of insecticides, because what they do is they make the plant resistant to the insects or just in some way undesirable or don't attract the insect or whatever. And so what that means is they usually use Roundup, and of course Roundup is made by Monsanto, which is the big evil, but Roundup is glyphosate, and I think we might have covered this before, but glyphosate is actually one of the least toxic herbicides out there.
But that doesn't matter because it's Monsanto, which, as we all know, is the great Satan.
Also, if you have to do a lot of tilling of the soil to reduce the number of weeds you have, that's actually bad for the soil, and it releases carbon into the atmosphere. And so really glyphosate is better than pretty much all the other options we have right now. Now, Novella does say that there are problems when you start over-relying on a single method of control. What happens if they all get a resistance to glyphosate? What happens then? But at least for the time being, until they can come up with other things, it's really the best option.
Of course, I'm sure that won't stop the anti-GMOs and their fun little nirvana fallacies.
So Honeycutt claims that when she switched her family to an all-organic diet, within 8 weeks, her son's symptoms of autism went away. Steve Novella calls this highly implausible. I call it impossible. Autism is the way the brain is wired together. It's a developmental disorder. And even if you could say, oh, autism is caused by this, so let's stop that, it wouldn't reverse the changes that have already been made to the brain. And even if it could, it certainly couldn't do it within 8 weeks. And,
Yeah, that'd be completely ridiculous. So, changes made over a course of years magically reversed in 8 weeks. Yeah, that's totally not snake oil salesman tactic right there. People, stop listening to Dr. Oz. He is a charlatan. I know some people who, like in real life, will try and get info from him because I'm told he is at least somewhat decent on some things, but honestly, my advice, find more reliable sources. Please.
So once again, Dr. Oz comes to the forefront as this week's biggest Bogon emitter. You say you don't like Bitcoin? Why not? Oh, because it's not gold. No problem. Just go to coins.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to Coinable, where you can buy gold or silver coins or bars with your Bitcoins, with literally up-to-the-minute spot pricing. Now there's no reason not to jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon. Whether you're a Bitcoin miner, service operator, Bitcoin business owner, or market speculator, you can get gold and silver from reputable dealers. And Coinable has Bitcoin liquidity for fast processing of your order. Coinable even utilizes a special shipping infrastructure to ensure that your investment arrives safely at your door. And you know what? By going to coins.bogosity.tv, you won't pay a Satoshi more for your purchase. But you'll help this podcast. You can even sell your gold and silver for Bitcoin as well. Coinable is your Bitcoin to gold marketplace. So go to coins.bogosity.tv and start turning your Bitcoins into gold now. And now let's rack the focus of this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. And this week, it goes to pretty much the entire European adult industry. Let me explain. They had a trade summit where they talked about the problems of new regulations which required age verification, and I'm not talking about verifying that the models are over 18. I mean that verifying that the visitors to the websites are over 18, which is much more difficult to do.
Oh, no way. Their horny teens are going to find ways around this. And I'm sure we'll in no way have them going to shadier websites, which are more likely to get their computers hit with a virus or something nasty. No.
Hey, I've got an idea. Let's write a filter that'll block porn. That'll work.
Oh.
So, what are they doing? Are they protesting these regulations that make it more difficult and expensive for them to conduct business? No, that would be sensible. Instead, they bemoan the fact that this will send adult websites to other countries where the laws aren't as stringent, and so their solution is to implement these worldwide.
And the reason why they were made Idiot Extraordinaire is now completely clear. I mean, it sounds like the anti-gun folk who say, oh, well, the reason this place has fewer gun crime and homicides despite less strict laws is because they get the guns from out of state or some other weak excuse.
Even though the state they supposedly got the guns from has less crime than they do.
Yeah.
Well, the problem they're looking at is the fact that in the UK, the adult business has shrunk by over 90% in the last 7 years. So it's really gone down. And this age verification, it just makes things worse. It costs the website provider around £1.50 for every visit. You go to the website, and that's £1.50 they have to spend to comply with these regulations. And even if you are over 18, you're probably not going to want to go through the rigmarole to do all this. You're just going to go to a website in another country that doesn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I always had this one Cracked article way back when by John Cheese where I talked about the idea where this one really interesting little case study of a company that basically they would have the people shopping, before they could even spend money, they had to, fill out an account with information, with their personal info, provide an email, wait for the confirmation email, click on that to verify their account and all that other stuff. And when they got rid of that, they saw an additional, I think it was like $300 million in revenues for that year. Hell, in the first month alone, they had like an additional $15 million just from that one little change. It's like, folks, let us shop, FAP, and do all that stuff in peace. That's the reason why we do it on the internet and not, say, getting in our car and going out in boring old me world. We want to do it in in peace without all that intrusion nonsense.
So one delegate idiot said, quote, "The biggest sites accessed by people in the UK are international. Why doesn't the government take those sites down? Like they did with the Pirate Bay. Because that worked so well, didn't it?
And even ignoring the fact that they don't have jurisdiction over that stuff, but, details.
Well, they go in and try to poison the DNS entries and everything, and there's always a way around it.
God, of course.
You just VPN to another country or something.
I mean, I definitely like the last bit of the comment, or the last paragraph. Well, ban the whole internet! Yeah, I mean, they may as well be saying that at this point.
Ban all the things!
Yeah, I mean, and of course on a more basic level, this attitude of, let's just, put a law on it and just let's put words on a paper, pass a law, and use force. Yeah, that'll work. I mean, so how is this different from religion or superstition again?
Because the words on paper are magic. You just make the right incantation, do your rain dance, and everything's good. So that has to make these European adult industry yahoos this week's Idiot Extraordinaire! Well, that wraps up this, Intercourse the Penguin edition of the Bogosity podcast. Please visit the forums of Bogosity.tv where you can read the show notes and join the discussion on these and other subjects. This podcast is free but not free to produce, so please donate via PayPal or Bitcoin at the top of the Bogosity.tv website or down the right-hand side of the podcast page and give generously to keep this podcast going. And if you'd like to contribute to the podcast, just send a question, statement, news article, or rant to podcast@bogosity.tv. Put it in an audio file, and if it's good enough, it'll get played right in the podcast. Thank you for listening, and thanks again to Travis Retriever for joining me.
It was a pleasure, as always.
Again, no podcast next week, so until we come back, here's a quote from Ronald Coase. We published a whole series of studies on regulation and its effects. Almost all the studies, perhaps all the studies, suggested that the results of regulation had been bad, that the prices were higher, that the product was worse adapted to the needs of consumers than it otherwise would have been. I can't remember one that's good. There were so many studies, and the result was quite universal. The effects were bad. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 Imported License. Bogosity. Christmas time is coming, and the most classic of Christmas stories is A Christmas Carol. But how much do you know about the original Charles Dickens novella? Have you dismissed it as a children's book with one-dimensional characters amounting to nothing but platitudes and cliches? Maybe your appreciation of the book was even muted by those dry, boring, annotated books they made you read in school. My book, the sarcastically annotated A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, uses both facts and humor to present the book in a way you probably haven't seen it before. Giving praise when deserved and beratement when warranted, this book is put in the perspective of its time and shows a dimensional, multi-layered Ebenezer Scrooge from start to finish. Skepticism, history, and even economics are employed to show the book in relation to today in an easily accessible format. Appreciate the Christmas of your youth all over again. Get the sarcastically annotated A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, available at Amazon and on PDF as well. Ban all the things!
Love that.
Just had to do that again.
Grief.